Hi all, video 3 where I'm going to discuss a little bit about the psychic energetic traits of a path cutter, as I did with the kind of what we say the psychological features that we have as change makers, as well as the one that we have as navigators and chaos pilots in a world of change and constantly shifting outer and inner environmental challenges that we are to learn to navigate into. You can kind of hear already in a process of thinking about a specific line of thought that I want to share in this video. Before this one, I put in a video I uploaded in the whole project Changemaker news, as well as which it will also be part of the whole template science course 3, because I put a lot of valuable information there that kind of gets us to the next point of where we are in the shifting reality. And for those of you who have not caught up with the idea yet, there is the Google site, the whole project reality news or new reality news updates that goes with the higher way of the different races that are here and what they are doing and what's going on in our galaxy. And this will, of course, have a ripple effect into our energy system because, as you recall, or might not, it depends on if you've done the whole transition science courses, but there I teach that we are interconnected. What happens to the galactic level, that's density 3, the inner domain, will ripple out to the middle domain, that's density 2, our vibrational field, and into our biological field, especially now when we're heading towards the 5th dimension, because that's the bridging point between the code systems that are behind our organic vessel, as well as the code systems that are connected to our mental field. And I talk about that in the whole transition science courses, where I explain that, and as well as in my older material, that the core of our biofield, if you want to put it as a core, but the deepest level of our biofield are connected to the basic imprint and foundation of our human DNA. So therefore, in a way, what we think affects our human DNA, which we are seeing in it. It kind of goes from we are having a specific belief system. It affects our emotionality, and then it affects the electrochemical processes of our body, which we call epigenetics, and then that ripples into the RNA, which then ignites or turns off certain markers of the DNA helix, the enzymes and the proteins and amino acids, etc., so that the codes of the DNA unfold different properties and features. So we kind of know that with science today. It's in the science understanding of how it worked together, and I've just added in extra in the whole transition science classes. But that's for you to go there. But that means that when we are now having this shift on the galactic plane, then that will ripple into the solar plane, and will ripple into the planetary plane, and it will ripple into our human plane of existence. So that's the interesting thing that is going on there. But that's not where I wanted to go today. I'm just kind of summing up there so you see the bridge into what I'm talking about here, because we are on a survival journey. And that's why I made the Changemaker material and going into the different psychological features of both being a change maker, what that means, and then move into being a chaos pilot, learning to deal with the emotional ups and downs and yo-yo effect of all of these different energies that are rippling in and out of our reality field, which will be more prominent as the old technologies that used to uphold what we could say the astral barrier and the frequency fence, as you know from my older material, my books, that were controlling humanity under the old world order programs. That is no longer there, and we're now under different reality programs from the different races that are here. And some of them are still doing what we call the harvesting, but the real severe harvesting was part of the old world order program, and that is kind of phasing out now. They are literally just The latest intel I get is that 60% of the human population, they're just cutting that one loose. And the rest are the 40%, technically only 30%. For some odd reason, it doesn't add up to 100, perhaps because 10% are part of the hybrid project. So they don't factor in or not counted into the collective, so to speak, because they are a species on their own. But the remaining 30%, that's where the stakes are high, and that's where the battle is really going on with who will get who and how many of the remains of both the original humans from the solar system that came here as part of Lemuria, the ones that came here as part of the Atlantean colonies, and then the ones that have come here under the colonizers. So that's the last three groups that are under division, so to speak. And there are not many of us from Lemuria, and I go back to Lemuria. I'm not Atlantean, and I'm not a reseeding after the fall of Atlantis. So that's for sure. I have participated, not in Atlantis, interesting enough, but the other projects I participated in different forms and versions, so therefore I know what I know. But Atlantis is kind of not my thing for some odd reason, or perhaps it's just been blocked. But either way, it's not something I feel affiliated with. Whenever I try and look back, I do see a lot of stuff, and I know a lot of stuff because I work with a lot of people that were connected to Atlantis. But it kind of, my energy system kind of skips a step further back and go into the Lemurian colonies, the fourth cycle before Atlantis came to be. And that's kind of where I have my latest clear recalling of our reality field before everything kind of went south. So just to put that in context, so that's again when we talk about the viability of our genetics and how far we can push it and how much we have to work with, kind of depends on what cycle that we have strongest affiliation with. Let me put it this way, because many of you have perhaps been coming in and out. You have visited the Pillar Project, or you have been part of certain colonies, but only for a short period of time, and not being here as in kind of as this is your reality, or this is your continued cycle of evolution where you have chosen to do your cycles, which I feel that the solar system, no matter where I look, except from Atlantis, I was not part of Atlantis, actually in an adjacent reality. I remember looking at the areas that when Atlantis were blown up, I remember seeing it from across the ocean, so to speak, which is interesting. But when we talk about distances in some of these older memories, they are not distances as we know of them today. I also recall standing on Mars and looking at our planet, literally standing on Mars and seeing our planet, looking down at our planet. So things have changed, we could say, due to the expansion of space and expansion of everything. So everything is expanding, which is interesting if we play with that idea, because then we can say in a way, well, perhaps our planet was smaller. It's growing bigger and bigger due to the expansion of space. So we are having these really weird dynamics going on that are also altering our reality perception when we're looking back in time, where things perhaps were closer together. We know as, for instance, the big continent Pangaea, where all of the tectonic plates were one landmass and then the rest of the planet were water. That's what science believe. And then it divided. Why did it divide? Why are they pulling apart? And these kind of good, interesting questions that we need to ask ourselves. Anyway, so we could say that if we go with the idea that the cycles are lodged into the planetary grids as well as the layers of our planet, then the core is the 1-7, or the first cycle. Then we have the molten lava level, that is the second cycle, kind of goes with hell, right? And then we have the third one where we are beginning to get into more solidified rocky crust thingy, not crust, but getting closer to the outer mantle. And then we have the latest additions, which is our reality that has been going back some 12,500 years, which is that layer that covers that. I know science dig deeper and find older layers. And there have not been humans on this planet all the time. There have been colonies. That's why I call it colonies, on and off. So this being here permanently is also something that is new, that came with the enclosure and with the hijacking and the complete imprisonment of humanity on this planet, and with the quarantine zone or field around, and literally cutting us off from the rest of the universal structure. That were not the case before the hijacking. So that's part of what we could say, well, the Dracos definitely enslaved us, and they not just enslaving us, putting shackles on our feet, but literally taking the old world order program and engineered in such a way that it looked like a reality where we were kind of okay. But those of us who have viability in our consciousness units and have the ability to put things together are just seeing the research, the hamster wheel, which more and more are seeing now as we are getting out of the quarantine zone and into the original density energies. So when we talk about the psychic energetic traits, I already touched ground with it it's not far more different from the path cutter. Sorry, the path cutter is not more different than the change maker and the chaos pilot. These are just different aspects. It's kind of a triangle where we work with the idea as to recall that the change maker is where we shift out of everything that is normal human awareness. That kind of goes with our physical life. And then you can say the chaos pilot goes with our emotional life, the ability to adjust and the resilience to deal with the challenges in this work. And then the path cutter is on the mental level, and that's heading towards the fifth dimension. So that's why I want to put it in and divide it in these three aspects of what it means to be human, because we are built up of trinity systems of different triangles that go together, whether you're just saying density 1, that's dimension 1, 2, or 3, or which is atomic or quantum, atomic, molecular, if we go with the Keylontic divisions. Then you have the next triangle that goes with dimension 4, 5, and 6. And you have the next one that goes with 7, 8, and 9. And then you have the top trinity that goes with 10, 11, and 12. And these are put together in a 12-pointed star, which is, if we again go with the Keylontics, are all 12 levels that needs to be activated to reach our full potentials. And each and one of these trinities are combined in different densities. So density 1 is the outer domain where we work with the quantum atomic molecular level, which I kind of feel is not accurate, and that's why I haven't taken. I began there, but kind of quickly shifted into saying, okay, we have the biofield, that is what we could say the morphogenetic field or the quantum field, that's the biofield. But as we shift out of the enclosure programming, we shift more and more into what we could say a holographic structure that is superseding the quantum structure. And then we have the electrochemical processes, and then we have the mental processes. So that's for me density 1. And then you can say density 2 are our first level of our higher order energy system that needs to be cleared, artificial 4th, artificial 5th, and the destroyed 6th dimension of the original reality field. And then we have, that's the middle domain. And then we have the inner domain, that is dimension 7, 8, and 9. That's the top level of our inner energy system. That again goes with 4, 5, and 6, a vibrational field, 7, 8, and 9 are radiation field, and 10, 11, 12 are the top level of our template where we have our consciousness units. So that one is how that is built up, just to do it in a short, reminding you of this way so that you kind of recall that this is the build up of our energy system, especially if you haven't done the transition courses or the template science courses. So just to give it here. So the traits of a path cutter is highly linked to the mental processes, and that's where I want to go with this one. You could say when we talk about the vibrational field, most of it has been centered around what we call spirituality. That's the derail programs that were put there so that if people did get out of their emotional programming and went in beyond or deeper into the astral plane under the astral barrier programs, they would get derailed into the spirituality programs and the love and light, where they would then circle around and not getting anywhere. It would be nice and kind, and it's probably very nice to be there, but it's not leading anywhere, and it just keeps people within the rebirth cycles. They never really get out of the wheel of samsara. They are stuck there, even though they are trying to reach enlightenment. They never really get out, because what gets us out of the emotionality, that's the mental level. The ability to work from above and learn to administer. I'm not saying control, because control is the wrong word. We can't control emotions, but we can learn to observe and administer in mindfulness how we're dealing with our emotionality. And then learn through the different techniques I talked about in the transition science courses to transform the emotional electrochemical processes so that we are not under the control of the energetic parasites and artificial fourth, or the old programs, or the old technologies, which is in the advanced clearing work. So I've made all of that material so you can slowly build your way through on all of the deeper levels of the below the mental field levels of our journey. So a path cutter is someone that has moved beyond the guides and the spiritual teaching systems and have moved into the alien agenda. Because in a way, I would say, again, if we're trying to classify things, the alien agenda belongs in the mental field capacity. It goes with a different perception of reality. It doesn't really fit into the emotional thing, even though that people that activates, they do put emotions into it, but it doesn't belong on the what we call the emotional field. It belongs to the vibrational field for sure, the artificial fourth, under the old world order program, and what were that kind of the astral barrier for sure. But when we talk about the real hardcore alien agenda and what's going on, we are moving out of the era of emotionality and begin to move into a different reality that has the same dynamics as our physical reality. And what do I mean by that? When we move in, when you are in the spirituality programs, it's all about everything in the spiritual plane of existence is good, right? Everything is good. This is the hell. And we move into the spiritual plane of existence, and there everything's good. We reconnect with source. We get back home. We can fly around in our compassionate golden light where everybody loves everybody and everything is good and fine. But when you move into the alien agenda, that's where things get a little bit more muddy, and that's where things get more complicated. And that's why you realize this floating around on a cloud does not really assist you when you begin to work with the alien agenda. And that's, you could say, how am I going to explain this? When you have your normal human emotionality, I'm here talking from a psychotherapist point of view. When you live inside this reality, there are different coping mechanisms to get through the day. And people are not really awake and aware inside this reality. They think they are, but they are not. Even though they are woke and they line up on social media and different groups and discuss reality, they are not woke at all. They're just pointing fingers at other groups. They are finding villains. It's the elite. The elite is the reason why we are stuck here in all of this misery, or all of these ideas that is always someone else's fault that we are in this misery. And it is someone else's fault, but they are pointing fingers the wrong direction. They are looking at their fellow humans and trying to find the villains within the fellow humans. And there are definitely humans on our planet, the psychopaths, and the narcissists and the murderers and the perverts and all of these kind of things, which are souls that shouldn't be here in human form, but they are, and they are running rampant inside this reality. Nobody wanted them in their own system, so they dumped them here, and now we are having the issue with them. We also know we have a huge problem with quite a lot of the male population, the Y chromosome that's been activated, connecting it to the dark forces of our reality. And therefore, males have a tendency to to switch into being slightly possessed by dark forces, which they have no recollection of. But us females, we definitely will live with the fear of males. One moment being nice, next moment we have literally a jerk or a slight monster at our hands that we have to deal with and figure out what happened. Was it me? Was it him? What the fuck happened here? So that's, again, talking from the angle of a female, putting that out there. So those of you who are males and are doing this, you need to learn to control your temper, because you are so easily possessed. You think you're not, but you are. Females are easily possessed by our parasites, and we get all emotional in a specific way, but you are equally possessible, but on a mental level, where you, in your discussions and your arguing and your rationality, quote unquote, and all of this logical reasoning of why this and that and whatever, you are so controlled by the dark forces in that. And I've seen it so many times in my life now. So it's just, it's out there. Me Too movement, you name it. It's all over the place, and nobody's really changing anything about it because it's in the Y chromosome. So that's some of the things that are going on the mental field and the whole change of the mental paradigms that are running our reality. That's part of the frequency fence. And the new event programs are going to change that. And especially if they succeed in changing the galactic core, then that will create what we could call a white version of the Y chromosome. Actually, it's a white version of both the X and the Y chromosome, which will go with the white galactic core. And the reason why I call it white is because it looks white compared to the dark one. So it is a polarity, and it is crystalline, and there are features about it, but this is just what's been done now in the attempt to create what we could say, not cold light, but white light, where different codes can be imbued and put into that can alter the core of the galaxy to come out with a different vibration in the 7th, 8th, and 9th dimension. And that's why it's called white, so to speak, because that's where you have all colors, and it's still just the purity level of it. It has not yet taken features, but it will be colorless, because it will be on frequencies. So the last level where we're technically looking at frequencies when we talk about using the neural network that are based upon colors and frequencies, white is the last color we kind of can see with our eyes. And beyond that, we begin to see codes, and we begin to see holographic features where things are divided differently. And that's what's going to happen with our galactic core. And that will affect the mental field on males and females on our planet. And that's where I see the path cutter level of us come in, because if we are looking at the mental features, even though I keep referring to mindfulness, but if you work with the Theravada Buddhism, you have the white color there as well, interestingly enough. So if you, the white Syrians, so that's kind of the highest level of the brain frequencies when we turn into white, and the lowest is the dark. That's the abyss, that's the nothingness, that's the deep space. So where everything is just emptiness, that's dark or black coloration. Everything in between are just artificial frequencies that are put in there, as you know. So just so you kind of get that understanding as well. And when I talk about in some of the other material where if you're having entities, you can go through the purple, blue, golden, white, then you literally take from you're saying, well, purple is kind of the highest scale on the frequency spectrum, and you have been accustomed to that. Purple is the crown chakra and these kind of things. That's the false coloration, but you can go with that one if you like. But the violet or the purple, that is actually going with the etheric plane, which the Bailey material teaches us. So that's the etheric biocodes. When we then shift into blue, then we're using the blue flame technology. When we shift into golden, we're adapting it to the color of our solar system, which is golden energy. That's the sun. Even though it's a white sun, it's golden energy when you look at it from the inside. And then you shift into white, where it disperses and crystallizes. So white is also crystallization. It's like white powder, crystallization of vital life force that turns into dust. So white has many functions. It can be the top level of something, but it can also be where whatever is there no longer can progress, and by that evaporates because it has been transformed to its unity level where it turns into white dust. So that's also what we could say, well, is evaporation a unity of whatever's going on there? Yes, everything that is creating division in it or diversity has been removed, and by that it collapsed into a unity field where it decomposes. So that's also dynamic that must be taken into consideration. And that's some of the things the path cutter knows. This is a mental feature. Knowing these forms of energy, knowing how energy works, and how the different processes of energy unfold are part of a path cutter. That's part of what the mental field is supposed to be able to do, not processing weird scientific paradigms where we need to study things to learn what others have made up, concoct of theories of our reality under the left-wing brotherhoods, deliberately made so. That's the derail system of the mental field. We have the spiritual, we have the emotionality where people are run by their emotions. And if they're trying to wake up, they then run into what we could say different spiritual teaching systems or different social media where they run rampant in their emotionality as well, unfolding all sorts of more or less distorted versions of how they behave themselves in these fora, which we know it's just getting worse and worse. As I recall years ago, when all of this began back in the early days, it was not common that people got death threats. It's completely normal today. If you do something shitty, you get death threats. Seriously, or just do anything good or whatever. So the environment is getting more and more hostile. Absolutely. And we can say that's one of the effects of the underworld energies rising up into humanity. So that's a problem. But also, I'm just putting it in here when we talk about the white energy. The Klontiks always talked about that you build this cone of white energy around you in the Mahararic shield. Well, if you're Syrian B, it probably works, but it has never worked for me because I'm Lemurian, so I don't use Atlantean technology, right? So yeah, it doesn't work for me. So therefore, I was more in alignment with the Bailey material, even though, again, we know the Syrian A's and the Syrian B's have been in each other's throats, and Klontiks are Syrian B and Bailey are Syrian A. So the Great White Brotherhood are the Syrian A white, the Lunars, the Syrian A's, and the Platons that joined that group at the planetary hierarchy under the Old World Order, collaborating with the Dracos. Yeah, not good, right? And then you had the Syrian B's that took the other side, but the Syrian B's are not nice either because some of them collaborate with the Andromedan strain, to use that one, pun intended. So, which we know from the Klontiks, they collaborated with the Andromedan races and some of the more odd, what we call D11 collective races, in that manner going to Vigar. So they were more on the feline humanoid agenda going there, which for me is not better than the other one, not at all. It's just another bunch. And some of the Syrians, A's, also collaborate with the Orion faction. So there is nobody there who can say, oh, these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. These are the good Syrians. These are the bad Syrians. All depends on relative to what and who and what you are and what system you come from. Just to put that in context as well. But that's kind of discernment that you are capable of doing as a path cutter. I talked about it many times, but here we are literally taking our looking glass and focus the ray of observation on the mental field. And what are we doing there? What's the psychic energetic traits? We could actually say the mental energetic traits of the path cutter, because it's all with the mental field. It's all about the processes, understanding, okay, we are having spirituality systems that are put there as a trap for the emotionality. If they wake up and want to go somewhere, you go into spirituality. Spirituality has been shifted out with QAnon, conspiracy, what have you, that creates separation, where you could say the old spirituality under the Old World Order were trying to create compassion and unity and communities, and we work together to try and solve the problems of what it means to be human in a good way, where we work together using healing and assisting each other. But in my experience, and as I've seen it on social media as well in different groups, you just have to poke the bear a little bit, and then all of these love and lighters, they turn into some really nasty ones that are almost chewing you up if they are allowed, because all this, I need to be so good all the time, suppressing everything else that's going on. And many of the ones that chose to be in that orientation of just being in the love and light, they actually had quite a lot of darkness in them, which is why they chose that as a controlling mechanism to keep the infection in their upper level energy system at bay. So technically, quite a lot of the ones that are love and light, they are under what we call a halo, or it's actually Lemurian coding that were invented in the fourth cycle to shut out the third cycle energies in the second cycle and first cycle. So we are having humans that have that Lemurian coding in their energy system, and on density 2, they look like light, but they just need, if you go into the 7, 8, and 9, and when you go into the upper level of their energy system, there you will see something that's very infected and very bad, and were part of the galactic wars and joined the evil forces or whatever, because they were captured and then put here. And as they were entered into the program, they got the Lemurian coding so that the dark forces would not be able to enter into our closure. That's some of the things the Dracos did to us. So we are having that understanding that nobody's really good in the manner that we would like to think about it. So that's also a mental capacity that we have, that we understand in this work, that, and including if you go, no matter what teaching system you go into of whether it's Christianity or Hinduism or Jainism or Islam or whatever, it's said that we're kind of all born sinners, right? Or with the Buddhist teachings, you're doing the Eightfold Path to get to enlightenment, because everything here is pain and suffering. Everything is fluctuation. Nothing here you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be in nirvana, whatever that is. You're not supposed to be here. So I know that's a short interpretation of Buddhist thinking processes. And again, you know my take on Buddhism, so you can do my full travel through the Buddhist line of thoughts there, if you like, which is what you can put in to get the understanding of the white Syrians as well. So we kind of have different forms of Syrians that are connected to the mental field. As you know from the transition sciences, the mental field is part of Syrian technology. That's why we have the Syrian A's, the Great White Brotherhood, planetary hierarchy, and the Syrian B's, and the Andromedan strain, and the different groups that work with the Aquifarians and whatever they were called, the Guardian Alliances, the other side. And then we have the Syrian A's of the original Theravada Buddhism that were planted in, so to speak, 500 BC, where they work with enlightenment and get out of the shackles of pain and suffering, and being stuck in this physical form, and trying to develop the scanners in different ways so that everything that we are could evaporate and cease to exist, and then leave this enclosure, this reality. And everything is about that. So that's also the understanding of the discernment between the different groups and what their teaching systems are and what we can use of these. And that's a mental feature more than an emotional feature. Because if you're kind of saying, oh yeah, I prefer the Syrian A's because they talk more about love and light or whatever, then you're responding emotionally. Whereas if you are going into a deep discussion about the Buddhist thinking processes, which many males are doing, having these long discussions about what Buddhism is and referring to the teaching system, and are putting in good stories and all of these, trying to explain what it is, I'm doing the same thing. But the difference is here that when people are discussing material made by others, they are tapping into a belief system that's technically not their own, and they are discussing something and aligning with it mentally and energetically on the mental plane, with thought forms that are not really theirs. And in the discussion, in the talk about it, they are adapting it to their functionality and their mind and the processes of their minds. And then it just becomes the parrot that is reciting that something else someone else has done. Whereas if you listen to what I'm doing here, sometimes I do refer to teaching systems, but I always and work with it from what I recall as I have worked with. I would never have done my take on Buddhism if it wasn't because I've had an incarnation as a Buddhist. If I hadn't had that, I wouldn't do that. For instance, I could go in and talk about Hinduism. I do have memories of being a boy in old India, but that's just a boy memory. He died before he even got grown up. So I wouldn't know the Hindu teaching system, the chakra system, except from what I kind of have pulled together by studying from others and then made my own version of it. But that's a thought form. That's part of a thought form. I can't say per se I have a recalling of a past life where I'm working with the chakra system in that past life in India, where the chakra system teaching system belongs. So I don't have the true understanding of how it connects to the Sanskrit language, the code systems of the Sanskrit language, and the original Brahmin priesthoods that came from Atlantis and what they were made of. And that's why I know about it. I can hold lectures about it. I can discuss what it is. I've seen it in this form, but I don't feel that it's something I really can say that's mine, as in that's really a science that goes with my lineage or goes with my cycles or my representation here on this planet. Where if we go in and say, well, when we talk about the restoration program and the original energy system I have talked about, that's my sciences. That's something I was part of creating. So that's my project. So that's the difference. Everything I'm saying here is something that I pull out of my functionality and my lineage and my consciousness potentials, which you will learn as well. And that's some of the traits of a path cutter. We are not parrots. We are not reciting the teaching systems of others. Some of you I'm working with in sessions when I ask, what's your goal with the progression work? And some of you begin talking all the things I've said. This is the goal of why to do the progression work. And that's good and fine. That's the original solar system teaching system of when you were part of the Pillar Project. That's what you learned in school there, right? But it has to come down to, what's your personal take on this? What's your personal investment in this? Why are you doing it? What's in it for you? And that's the interesting question that people must ask themselves. Why are you doing this? Not just because you are getting kind of head over heels of this enormous complex teaching system I'm presenting here, which we've seen with the Kelontics as well, and we've seen it with the Bailey material. Once you tap into these different pillars and the different races and why they're here, each and one of them have their own sciences. And you can tap into that similarly as you can tap into, if you have Brian Greene explain quantum sciences. The reason why I know of quantum science is because he has a lot of visuals going on, so I can see what's going on and how he envisioned this. And he has made very different videos on YouTube where it's very visual, so it's natural for me to understand it. But if you ask me, have I personal recollections and understanding of the quantum field? No, for me, quantum field is kind of a part of an adding of the old world order hijacker program. So similar as we had the astral barrier and we have the frequency fence, the quantum field and the quantum morphogenetic field are seeded into the original LPF1 network so that this physical form can exist and this artificial program can exist. It's the bridge into the original, what we call middle domain. And there the energies look quite different. So that's again a feature of the mental capacity. And I know I am not giving you exact bullet points of this is what are the traits of a path cutter, but I'm giving you a process. Because once we begin working with our mental capacity, it's about the ability to observe, to work with, to discern the information you're getting, to put it into the right boxes, to figure out what does that information hold of code systems and what does that mean for you. because that's what's the point with the perception field that begins with the mental field on the frequency barrier or the frequency fence falling apart, being shifted out with event program now and the artificial reality, and everybody's looking at their phones and nobody's really observing anything anymore. They're either on a podcast or listen to influencers or living through others or whatever is going on. Nobody's really living anymore. But that's the plan. That's what they're doing. That's the way they're phasing out the old world order program and making sure, we'll just keep people busy and then we shift everything around them. So that's also part of us that are, as path cutters, we must be really awake, seeing things, observing things, understanding things, discerning things, understanding what it is, what's happening, what are the effects of this, what are the ramifications of it. And that's why we shift out of the mental control programs and go into what we call the mind field, where we begin to process information and put it into a dynamic process. Because knowledge that is not processed into energy and affects our mental field, the different layers of our mental fields, and I talk about that in the Template Science Course 3, are not really information that we have utilized. Because what is the purpose of information? Not to sound fucking smart, but it's part of developing our mental field so that it can transform itself out of the frequency fence control mechanisms and the false science systems and thought processes and systems of thought, similar as we worked our way out of spirituality and emotionality until we got to the vibrational field, where we connect to our heart field and work with timelines, and suddenly understood that the heart field is the producer of the density energy, similar as our heart pumps the blood around in our body. It's what keeps us alive. The blood is the physical version. The heart field is the density version. That's what links us up to the timelines and the code streams and the reality field that technically keep us alive. Yes, we are connected to the lineages below our feet, into the racial grids. But when it comes to when we could technically not be connected to any of the planetary grids and still be present here, because we are connected to the vibrational levels of the middle domain. That's where our heart field comes. And normally that was connected to the sun. That's one of the re-engineerings that were done again by the Dracos, so that we would both be connected to the planet and recircle via the inserted symbol in our root chakra and the racial grids, keeping us circulating physically on this planet. So the physical forms would be, the biofields would be reutilized, because that's technically what it is. That's why we have past life memories, etc. as part of our biocodes. That form we have has been reused quite a lot of times. And then we had the emotional field that were running between what I call the astral plane and the artificial fourth, controlled by the dynamics of the sun and the energies of the sun, which were reconstructed as well as part of the takeover, literally being what we could call the energy that will run the quarantine zone. Our entire solar system to the Maldakian. That's why Maldak, aside from all the other stuff that happened when it exploded, that became the outer perimeter of our system under the sun and the enclosure. Beyond the asteroid belt, the enclosure doesn't go beyond that one, because that's the field of scattered debris of a planet that used to be there. And it's technically, I know science does not say that, but when you look at that asteroid belt, and all of the rocks that are kept there in that orbit, it has emptiness in it. It has abyss energies in it. So that's the outer field, the perimeter of the enclosure. And then beyond that, even though we look through the program that we are part of and we see the planets as they are, and we put them into the frequency spectrum, and we're seeing the frequency version of it. But if you do travel, and we're able to travel physically, not a satellite, not a drone, not anything, not a spacecraft, but physically, via spacecraft, but physically were to go beyond the asteroid belt, you would see a completely different reality there, especially if you were capable of using your original consciousness potentials. So that's kind of where I will begin the process of the psychic energetic traits of a path cutter. It is highly connected to the mental field and the development of the mental field and the ability to work on the different levels of our reality using the different triangles and understanding the different types of energies that are connected to the different, when I say different energies, I'm talking about the different density levels, the sub-dimensions, but all of the, what we could say, the different information systems that are in each and one of these dimensions. That's where our mind field begins to process that information so that we build out, similarly as we recreated the vibrational field, we are via the complex information systems we are working with and the teaching systems we study, we are developing not just the neural network, but also the density structural layers of our brain that goes into the mind field and are divided into different structural layers that are combined together to create the perception field that allows us to perceive, literally expand our mind, our brain capacity and inner sensing systems to the fifth dimension. And then look whatever's going on in the fifth dimension or the sixth or the seventh or whatever, because that's part of the layers of our mind field that turns into a perception field where the mind field processes the different complex information systems and by that build what we could call an expanded density neural network that stretches beyond our brain. But with the energies of our heart field and our ability to use our consciousness potentials, we can then activate the mind field and then it becomes the perception field. So with that piece of information given here, we will move into the next video. Thank you.